afford it, we'll let them know, okay, there's financial aid available, but we used to just advertise it as a $10,000 fee. Can everybody hear?
Yes.
Okay. Then the key thing was really tracking the data. So it was all about M&A. We had an Indian lady, I can't remember how she found us, but she was living in Nigeria with her husband for a few years. And so she said, hey, I'm an M&A person. We're like, great, come on board and help us track everything that's going on. So our first 2 batches were 12 people each. So that was a key event, graduating our first 2 batches. We did the first one in August and the second one in October. One of the key assumptions we're trying to test is like, how do you get to doing this every month? But initially we're like, okay, let's do 1 every 3 months. It gives us time to find employers, match them, and all of that. We hired our first full-time employee, that was Moriola, in December of that year. Also in December of that year, we got DRK Foundation funding. So that was $300,000 for 3 years. And that was sort of a huge thing for us because it meant that we could at least have stability for 3 years as long as we kept our costs within that range. I also remember back then we used to do excursions. So our first excursion, I think we went to, we went to Tudor House, some hotel in Lekki, and I remember we have a photo of that outside. Back then we had interns, so Quixi, Ore, my brother Obemi, and just pretty much anybody come by, help, make videos, teach a class, record transcripts. I remember Quixi made a video on how to do an elevator pitch. We had our training consultants, so we would pay them per day. We had Mobola, we had Dako, we had Tosin, Craig. We had Mr. Francis who would do F&B practicals. And then we got some longer term interns. So Zuleika was an interesting one. She heard about us on the radio. She came to apply for the program. And I was like, you don't need this program. You just graduated from the University of Ilorin. You clearly know your stuff. Why don't you just come and intern and help me run the next batch? So she came and helped run the second batch. Michael also found us then. Ajoke as well had been with us from the start. And we were in Victoria Island back then. So it was very convenient. So in the morning we would just upload everything in my car because we couldn't keep it there. So the broom, the mop, everything, the buckets, take it there and then go home in the evening with it. I think the key things that we learned that year was that the 3 weeks curriculum does work. There was some feedback around, well, why don't they come and get some practical experience? But we didn't do that until later. And then the key thing we also learned was that employers were willing to hire. I think we had our very first paying client, which was the Dozier brothers, so Cafe Miu, Mr. Biggs, and all of that. So that was a huge one for us. The others were like, no, we're not going to pay, but we're fine. But we just wanted to use their logo and put it on our flyer, so we were fine for people to take waivers for free. But that was sort of our first 6 months in 2013.
So for 2014, our goal was to find, train, and match youths to jobs, and then what we were doing, or the project or the strategy towards that was developing channels for applicants, building employer relationship and increasing employer pool. That was it. And also how to hire right, because we were doing a lot of things and we just needed to find out how we were going to hire the right people into the program. And then we were also learning. That was when introduction of Salesforce came in, because we needed to manage our data and track it. And then we also introduced job shadow. So after the training, how do you test whatever you've learned in class? So we introduced job shadow into the program. So our key events was that was when we had our first anniversary. We had our first onboarding, first government partnership, our first off-site visit. We also got our CAC, got our 501c3 that allows us to open a US account. That's where we started work plan. We had our HBX training. WAVE board was formed in 2014 as well. HBS alumni prize of $10,000, the missile one. We had our first alumni workshop, first corporate training, first WAVE scholarship, and then we had a first 100% placement.
Sama's badge.
Yeah, that was my badge.
Someone just asked what was HBX training.
Harvard Business School training, but it's an online course. So we had the people that worked in 2014 was Omoriola, Modupe, Frank, Aji and Abayomi were interns. Nicolas Salmafin, Folakemi, Chiamaka was an employer partner. I'm sure you've seen that during the anniversary. And then
Very briefly, each of you talk about why you joined. Nicholas.
okay, so I joined WAVE because at that point I was in school and I needed something flexible that could allow me to work and school, and then I was also learning a whole lot of things, something that I didn't think I could do in my life. I didn't think I could do administrative work or be in the education environment at all. So it was something new to me and I was learning, so I decided that okay, this is a team I want to take on board.
Oh, okay. I joined then because I watched the elevator pitch on WAVE websites. I heard Misa was doing like this kind of voiceover. So how did you hear about it? And this we are talking about, it has changed my life, blah blah blah. I didn't even know exactly what role I was going to be coming in for, because when the person, she sent me to GD, she sent me one for training, one for admissions. But I kind of just liked the fact that the impact, people are coming in and people are going to be like transformed. It was something that I'd been working in for profit before, so it was really different. I felt like I was going to be able to bring in my everything, you could contribute to ideas. So when I came and I met Miss San, I just said, okay, so I think I like to be here. So that's why I joined.
Nicholas.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so our products and services at that time was training, matching, and on-the-job support. We also moved from VI to Yaba because we were trying to find like a middle ground for islanders, and then what we learned that year was that we learned to train every other month. Usually in 2013 it used to be like 3 months before we start training, so we learned that we could train every other month, and then that year we trained 6 batches. We also learned that job shadow was more effective if you do it 1 week as opposed to 3 days, because it used to be 3 days back then. And then we also learned that there was a need to define a way fit. Then it was just anybody. We didn't know what was working, but as at the end of 2014, we realized that we needed to define who a way fit was, and that was it.
Welcome to 2015. So our goals and results for 2015 was expansion. Because from the learning from 2014, from the learnings from 2014, we started to expand and test and do a lot of experiments. One of the expansion and codification, prototyping of experiments, which were in Bagada, Lekki, and Ikotun. Project and strategies. We had a curriculum review 1 week where we all sat and thought about how can we make the curriculum to be more activity based. Thank you. And we opened Academy in a Box. One of our experiments was AIB, Academy in a Box. And we also started to tweak our messaging so that people who we spoke to can understand us, because we found out that they were listening, but they couldn't understand and make decisions. So we started to test different ways of our messaging. It was in 2015 that we started to document, or not started to document, but maybe deliberately, the living manual that any new employee can come up with and use to get the meat of what their department or their work is about. It was in 2015 that we hired outreach officers because we're trying to expand. Also, it was in 2015 that we designed the rubric. The rubric was designed in 2015. The rubric is an interview tool that helped us to be more objective with our interviews. Prior to this time, it would just be 4 people, 4 different people, one applicant would go through 4 different people to do interviews, and it was really, really lengthy and time consuming. So we had to think about all the things that we do. How do we then put it on paper, codify it, and come up with a rubric. It was in 2015 also that we had WAVE internships. So basically that was it for key events. Townstorming, we started Townstorming in 2015. We started Retreat in 2015. Name change from WAVE Hospitality to WAVE Academy. We had our first team offsites, that just what we are doing now in 2016 at Lekki Conservation Center. Our first expulsion was in 2015, quite a memorable one. The first coppers that joined the organization, we had 2 coppers at the time, Esther and... Okay, Esther.
They were together.
Yeah, okay. All right. It was also in 2015 that we merged the roles, and the first department that had been merged was admissions and outreach. First local board meeting also held in 2015. Also, we had partnerships with Yali in 2015. Our first resignation, also OA resignation, was in 2015. TTO, Ajoke and Modupe, they had gone off to do other things. And also it was in 2015 that we had our first TGIF, and also our first corporate training outside of Lagos. I think it was Bristol, Port Harcourt. People that joined in 2015: Kelvin, Bob Manuel, Jide King, Ruth David, Somto Ogbonna, Taiwo Oni, Shewo Kolawon, Samuel Ihonde, Ebei Uberaise, Nola Moshi, Kemi Odede, Thompson, I don't know, Michael Iboye. Michael was staffed in 2015, so he had always been from the beginning, but he became a full staff in 2015. Rebecca Mate, Adi Mavenga. Adi was one of our Yali fellows. So, product. Oh, we're supposed to talk about why we joined WAVE. Should we do that? Okay.
Okay.
So, our product and services in 2015 was our AIB, our Academy in a Box. We rolled out, we had planned, so the plan was already on ground to roll out 4 different academies in 2015. One was Lekki, the other was Ojota, Festac, and Yaba. Alaba.
We cancelled.
But that was cancelled. All right. Okay. So in 2015 we had in 2015 we had then, prior to that time, we had then tested out how this was going to work. Remember that 2015 was a lot of experiments for our expansion. So we tested out trainings in Lekki. We had tested out trainings in Bagada. We had tested out in Ikotun and Bariga. No, didn't test here. That was an error.
But
Yaba at the
we got
time.
Hughes Avenue in 2015, so expansion in line with.
Yeah,
We moved in 2016.
So we had gotten, thank you, Somto. We had gotten our office, the new office we are at right now, admin office in 2015, well, moved in 2016. Learnings was, our curriculum became more activity-based, reason being that we're going to new locations. We had issues from our learnings over the year. We had issues with power, issues with how do you projector, how do we make our training to be lean in terms of efficiency? Yeah. So and those were the days when you were literally a moving office. So you had your laptop, you had your power bank, phone power bank, extension, almost put a generator in your bag, right? So yeah, and all the books and everything, mop and brooms, yeah, very wonderful. So customizing our problem solving class and communication class as well. I remember that whole week we had sat down and thought about acronyms: Lucy, Susie, and Paul. So it was in 2015 as well that we had no more upfront payments because we're trying to reach a lot of people.
Came up with the idea.
And the idea of no upfront payment, because again, as we're testing our messaging in different locations, we saw that, hey, if we're going to get a lot of people, we need to remove this barrier to entry. And so we had then made it so until you get a job, you know, you don't pay us. So yeah, it was also, you know, in line with testing our messaging. We had come up with a DQ sales, which is a decision quotient. How do we help the people that we speak to increase their decision-making quotient? Because you speak to them, they listen, but the power to make a decision is very slim. So how do we take them, you know, through a journey of their life and then bring them to this place, and what can be after they do the training? And we saw that worked. Our conversion increased, our funnel conversion increased, and it was more efficient. Also in that year, we're building credibility because we found out, in Yaba, we didn't have any issues with people just coming in. We had an office, it was pretty much stable. You know, you find people actually sitting in offices. And it was also during that time that you had a lot of people, GNLDs, and, you know, everybody becoming, you know, employment agencies. So we had to, you know, do a lot to ensure that we build credibility. That was when we were doing trainings in churches, in small, you know, offices, and people didn't just trust us. It was also in 2015 that we started training every month. In 2014, it was every other month, but now in 2015, we started training every month in you know, the stable locations that we have, which was in Yaba. And pretty much that's it for 2015.
I think that was also the year we said minimum wage of 20K.
Yes, and unless you have accommodation.
Yeah.
You can't pay less than 20,000 naira as an employer, except you're coming with accommodation and feeding.
The rubric started in 2015.
Yes, I had mentioned that.
When did you start Berks?
Work assessment, I think it started end of 2014. Yeah, because by the time you guys were in, yeah. So Nicholas, why did you join? And then the 2015 people will talk about why they joined.
So in 2014, I was a believer. I lived in Nigeria. So
You were a believer.
yeah, I believe that the project Nigeria can work.
I don't Nigeria.
So, and I felt, you know, this was one of the things that could, you know, help the project work, and I wanted to contribute to it. You know, it's not working.
Nigeria is not work.
That's the first one.
Actually,
Face Canada.
yeah.
Ruth.
What about
Noella joined before Ruth.
Yes, Noella.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just curious. I mean, I was living in South Africa. I wanted to move to Nigeria, to Lagos. Had one conversation with Nissan, and we really just came. I came from a background of education, so it kind of made sense. I came for 6 months, which turned into 4 years.
Sheon joined after. Ruth, did you meet Sheon yet?
But as a staff, no.
But as an intern?
Yes.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Taiwo.
Oh, Taiwo. Sorry, what am I going? Taiwo and Kelvin first. Taiwo and Kelvin.
Alright, so sincerely I was actually looking for a job when I came to WAVE. That was the truth. Again?
All of us.
Yeah, so I joined WAVE because right from my school I've always been like an activist. Like not really activist, like you get to see your fellow person to protect your person and do what you can to make things better. So when I joined, when I look at what you do, and I'm still here in the last 4 years.
Kelvin?
I had just finished school and I was looking to get work experience. I didn't want to be idle.
Sure.
Yeah, so I was looking for a job, so hoping to get a job through WAVE, placed in a different job, because I'm an alumni, but I got a job with an employer, but the organization being startup, so we worked for Intel for 3-4 months, 5 months, then I joined WAVE because I saw the vision, because they actually made the impact on me, and I wanted to contribute to that impact by being part of the team.
I would recommend you bring the Monday meeting.
Somzo.
Ruth.
Okay.
Ruth and Ebere.
I think about it before.
Okay, so I have always wanted to be part of change, bringing change to the nation. So, and I also I came for 2 reasons actually. I'm not going to lie. So, I wanted to do that and also discover myself. So, in helping others to connect their dots, I thought I was going to connect mine as well. So, that's my reason why I'm at WAVE. I thought I was going to spend 2 years though. Yeah, 4.
Well, anyways, looks like we're talking about timelines. I never had timelines. So I had met Michael, and Michael had met Nissan, and we had started to talk about the work that he does, and I was pretty much interested in it because before that time we were talking about the plans for the future, and why did I then eventually join WAVE? I had always wanted to be impacted young people and gave them opportunities and information that I never had access to. So I saw WAVE as a pathway for young people to be able to have a start in life. So when I got the opportunity, I took it. Funny thing, when I was discussing with Michael had said, I should join Outreach because of my political background when I was in school, very much into politics and doing my graduate things. But I had then seen the department like, no, I'm not sure I can function with these people. And I said, okay, I think training, who are now my people, right? My tribe, 100%. So I had joined training, but life took its course, and I went back to where I was supposed to be. I'm happy I did that.
So I'd met Michael, similar truth. University, I always talk about wanting to impact the life of youths, wanted to go into education, wanted to teach, but I knew I couldn't function in a regular school. It was going to be hell for me. So hearing about, when Michael spoke about WAVE and what they do, came for interviews, came for job shadow. My first month on the job, they expelled the batch, heartbreaking as it can be. But it was just interesting to see that everybody that was expelled, or 70% of people that were expelled came back again because they just were passionate about what they were learning. And so it kind of gave me a reason to want to stay and see it to the end. And so 1 year became 4 years and counting.
I think, for me, I think 2 things. Alignment of my passions, young people, as well as customer service industry. I mean, to be honest, I haven't always made I still don't, but I mean, I have an amazing past and haven't always made the right decisions in my life. So it was the opportunity to influence people and just help them begin to see a different future. And just that go-getter, never give up spirit was what brought me to WAVE. And I mean, customer service, bad service, I mean, it's like insects are crawling in my skin. I can't stand it. And it was just alignment of those 2 passions that brought me here. So I started training, like some people know, and then found my way in. now I'm here.
So for me, it was just to face a new challenge and acquire new skills. So back then, I actually left my job, and the plan was to, when I went for the anniversary, I got like a response from Nissan to, come and intern, and I just took it up to myself to learn something different based on what I've been doing in the past. So it was an opportunity. Thanks.
2016.
2016. Okay. Welcome to the first